They say true wealth cannot be measured in gold, but they're wrong. In my case, it was measured precisely in drops of blood. Every coin in my family's fortune, every property, every jewel, all of it has an exact price. One life per decade, one sacrifice per generation. When my grandfather died, he left me everything. An ancestral mansion, endless bank accounts, a business empire spanning continents, and a secret no one should ever discover. At midnight in the basement of Blackwood Manor, I saw the impossible. The gold bleeds. Every coin, every bar, every precious object. Weeping red tears that pulse like a human heart. Accept your inheritance, whispered a voice from the shadows. All the others did. Your father, your grandfather, every generation before them. A small sacrifice for unlimited wealth. What would you do? Continue the tradition, offering the blood of innocence to maintain your empire? Or would you renounce everything, your wealth, your power, perhaps even your own life, to break a centuries-old curse? I am the last of the Blackwoods, and at midnight, when the gold begins to bleed, I must make my choice. The grandfather clock in Blackwood Manor chimed 11 times, each toll a solemn warning. Sebastian Blackwood stood before his late grandfather's portrait, clutching a mysterious letter in his trembling hands. The last of the Blackwood line, he whispered. At 32, Sebastian never expected to inherit anything from the grandfather who barely acknowledged his existence. His father, Edward, had been disowned for marrying beneath the family station. Now, with both parents gone and his grandfather joining them, Sebastian found himself sole heir to a fortune that Mr. Hargrove, the family lawyer, described as substantial beyond imagining. Sebastian examined the envelope's wax seal, an ornate B surrounded by thorny vines. Mr. Hargrove had given it to him after the will reading with unsettling gravity. Your grandfather insisted this be given to you privately. He was particular about the timing. The manor creaked around him as he unfolded the yellowed paper. Sebastian, if you are reading this, I have failed to break the curse that has plagued our family for generations. The burden now falls to you, the last of our bloodline. The Blackwood fortune was built on blood, and blood it still demands. At midnight on the first full moon after my death, go to the old vault beneath the east wing. What you find there will reveal the truth. Do not touch the gold until you understand the price. It bleeds, Sebastian. Every piece of it bleeds. The curse can be broken, but the cost is steep. I was too weak, too greedy. Perhaps you will make a different choice. There is a ledger hidden behind my portrait. It chronicles everything. Time is short. The midnight hour approaches. Augustus Blackwood. Sebastian's throat constricted. Curse, blood? The ravings of a senile old man, surely. Yet the hair on his neck stood on end. The grandfather clock ticked relentlessly as he approached the portrait. His fingers found a catch, and the frame swung forward on hidden hinges, revealing a leather-bound book, the ledger. As Sebastian reached for it, the clock struck midnight. The first chime reverberated through the manor, followed by a sound he'd never heard before, a soft, wet pulsing from somewhere beneath his feet. The floorboards vibrated with each rhythmic pulse. By the 12th chime, the sound had grown deafening. The letter slipped from Sebastian's fingers as he clutched the ledger to his chest. In the silence that followed, a single drop of something dark and viscous fell from the ceiling. Landing on his hand, it was warm, red, metallic-scented. Blood. The east wing of Blackwood Manor had been sealed for decades. Sebastian stood before its massive oak door, the ledger under one arm and a brass candlestick in his hand. The lock yielded to an antique key he'd found in the ledger's pages. The door opened with a groan, exhaling stale air. Sebastian descended the spiral staircase, his candlelight barely penetrating the darkness. His grandfather's meticulous handwriting had documented the curse in excruciating detail. A bargain struck by Sebastian's great-great-grandfather, Thaddeus Blackwood, with an entity referred to only as the benefactor. Each generation of Blackwoods had apparently appeased the curse through blood sacrifices. The final entry, dated weeks before Augustus's death, contained only 5 words. The gold bleeds at midnight. At the bottom of the stairs, a narrow corridor stretched before him, ending at an iron door embossed with the Blackwood crest. Dark rivulets seeped from beneath the door, pooling on the stone floor. The handle was slick with the same substance, warm, viscous, metallic, scented. Blood. The door swung open to a room glittering with countless gold coins, ingots, jewelry, and artifacts, the Blackwood fortune in its physical form. And it was bleeding. Every piece of gold wept crimson tears that collected in pools, flowing toward a drain in the center of the room. The pulsing sound came from the gold itself, each piece contracting and expanding slightly. Sebastian stumbled backward, nearly dropping his candle. "This isn't possible," he whispered. But the evidence defied explanation. Atop a marble pedestal sat a single gold coin, larger than the others. Unlike the rest of the treasure, this piece remained unblemished. Engraved on its surface was a hooded figure with one hand extended and a heart in the other. As Sebastian approached, a voice behind him spoke. "Don't touch it." He whirled around to see a woman in the doorway. She stepped into the vault, the dim light revealing a face that seemed both youthful and ancient, framed by raven-black hair. "Who are you?" Sebastian demanded. "How did you get in here?" "My name is Eleanor Wright. And the better question is, how did you manage to inherit this cursed fortune without knowing anything about it?" She nodded toward the ledger. "I see Augustus finally decided to share the family secret. Too little, too late, as usual. You knew my grandfather." A bitter smile crossed Eleanor's face. "I've known every Blackwood patriarch for the past century. They all make the same mistakes, believe they can outsmart the curse." "That's not possible," Sebastian said. "She couldn't be more than 30. Many things you once thought impossible are going to become quite real to you very quickly, Sebastian." She gestured to the bleeding wealth around them. "Starting with this, what is happening here?" Sebastian asked, the ledger suddenly heavy in his arms. "Your ancestor made a deal for wealth and power. The price was blood, Blackwood blood. Each generation has paid it one way or another." She nodded toward the central coin. "Touch that, accept the inheritance fully, and the bleeding will stop. Until the next full moon. And then the gold demands its tribute." Dawn broke over Blackwood Manor as Sebastian sat surrounded by documents in the study. The ledger lay open before him, alongside family photographs, newspaper clippings, and letters from his grandfather's desk. His eyes burned from hours of reading, piecing together his family's curse. Eleanor perched on the windowsill, gazing at the mist-shrouded grounds. There was something familiar about her, though Sebastian couldn't place it. "My great-great-grandfather was a mining engineer," Sebastian said. "The newspapers called his discovery of gold in the abandoned Silver Creek mine a miracle." "No miracle. A transaction," Eleanor replied. "He writes about the entity in the depths and a covenant sealed in blood. But he never explicitly states what he encountered. They called it different things in different times," Eleanor said. "Demon, spirit, forgotten god. The name doesn't matter. What matters is the bargain." Sebastian found a faded photograph of Thaddeus Blackwood standing before the mine entrance, his hand resting on a walking stick topped with a gold handle shaped like the hooded figure from the coin. His reminder. "His master," Eleanor said. "The entity resides in gold, transforms it, multiplies it. But gold is inert. To animate it requires life force." "Blood," Sebastian said. Eleanor nodded. "Your ancestor offered his bloodline in perpetuity. Each generation, the inheritor must feed the gold with Blackwood blood during the full moon, or what? The gold reclaims all it has given, with interest." She pointed to the miners in the photograph. "Notice anything about these men?" Sebastian studied them more carefully. Despite the poor quality, he saw family resemblances, the Blackwood jawline, deep-set eyes. Cousins, he realized. Distant relations, the first sacrifices, Eleanor confirmed. "The mine collapse of 1887 was reported as an accident. How do you know all this?" Sebastian asked. "Who are you really?" "I told you. I've known every Blackwood patriarch. That's impossible." "You're my age." A sad smile crossed her face. I'm much older than I appear, Sebastian. Another consequence of your ancestors' bargain. She pushed up her sleeve, revealing a forearm marked with thin white scars. I was there when Thaddeus made his bargain. I tried to stop him. Sebastian stared at her, then at her scars, finding no deception. That would make you 138 years old, she finished. Preserved by the same curse that damns your family. My blood was part of the initial offering, though Thaddeus didn't have my consent. I was his fiancée. If what you're saying is true, why help me understand? Eleanor turned back to the window. Because in all these years, watching generation after generation of Blackwoods choose wealth over redemption, I've never seen one with your eyes. My eyes. Your father's eyes. Edward was different, the only Blackwood heir who walked away from the fortune rather than pay its price. Her voice softened. I had hope for him, but Augustus tracked him down after your mother died. Brought him back to discuss the inheritance. Your father never left the manor alive. Sebastian felt the floor drop from beneath him. My father died in a car accident. Eleanor's silence was answer enough. There must be a way to break it, Sebastian said. Your grandfather thought so too, Eleanor replied. He spent decades searching for one. Sebastian found a small portrait of his grandmother Charlotte, who had died young. Not every Blackwood chose wealth, he said quietly. My father walked away and paid with his life, Eleanor reminded him gently. Then I'll find another way. I won't perpetuate this cycle. I won't spill blood for gold. Eleanor studied him, hope flickering in her ancient eyes. Then we'd better get to work. We have 2 days before the full moon rises. Outside, thunder rumbled, a warning like the growl of a beast stirring from slumber. Rain lashed against the windows of the manor library, where Sebastian had spent hours sifting through his grandfather's collection of obscure texts. Eleanor moved among the shelves with familiarity, selecting specific volumes. Augustus believed the answer lay in understanding the entity itself, she explained, opening a leather-bound manuscript with disturbing illustrations. He collected accounts of similar bargains throughout history. Eleanor turned the manuscript toward Sebastian, pointing to the hooded figure from the coin. The entity has many names, but scholars in medieval Prague called it Aureus Sitiens, the gold thirst, Sebastian translated. Or the thirsting gold. It feeds on blood to animate the gold to make it multiply. But the hunger is never satisfied. She turned to another illustration of a family tree with red lines drawn through most branches. The bloodline thins with each generation as the curse claims its sacrifices. Eventually, the family dies out entirely. Sebastian thought of the Blackwood family plot, dozens of graves spanning generations, but fewer in recent decades. His father had been an only child, as had Augustus before him. So even if I continue the payments, the curse will eventually claim all of us anyway. Elena nodded grimly. The Blackwoods have lasted longer than most families under similar curses, partly because your grandfather was resourceful in finding alternative blood sacrifices. What do you mean? Eleanor's face darkened. The East Wing wasn't always sealed. It once housed distant relatives, vulnerable people with just enough Blackwood blood to satisfy the curse temporarily. Lightning illuminated the library, casting harsh shadows. In that stark light, Sebastian glimpsed something behind Eleanor's composed features, a pain so deep it made his own suffering seem childish. You've tried to stop this before, he realized. With other heirs, yes, she admitted. Your grandfather, his father, his grandfather. They all showed remorse, even determination to end the cycle. Her voice hardened. But when the gold began to bleed, they made the same choice Thaddeus made. I won't make that choice, Sebastian insisted. Many have said those exact words, Eleanor replied. The curse doesn't just take blood, Sebastian. It corrupts the soul. Sebastian found a journal in his grandfather's handwriting, November 14th, 1982. E came to me today, begging for Charlotte. Says he'll never forgive me if she dies. As if I have a choice. The entity will accept no substitute this moon. I've tried everything. The right woman's blood no longer satisfies it as it once did. If I refuse the payment, we lose everything. Not just the money, but our lives, right woman." "He means you?" Sebastian asked. Eleanor's hand went to the scars on her arm. "Augustus found that my blood, tainted by the original bargain, could sometimes satisfy the curse without requiring a Blackwood life. For decades I was his contingency plan." Sebastian recoiled. "He bled you?" "For decades. It was a bargain of our own," she said tonelessly. "My blood for his promise to find a way to break the curse." In a later entry, Sebastian found March 3rd, 1998. "I believe I've found it at last. The entity's weakness. The ritual requires a willing sacrifice, blood freely given by the last of the bloodline. The right woman insists she's found references to this in the Prague manuscripts, and for once, I believe her. The binding must occur during the eclipse 3 days after the full moon, when the entity is sated and dormant. I've begun preparations, though I fear my strength is failing, and later, April 10th, 1998, failure. The entity knew my intentions. The gold turned to ash in my hands, then reconstituted itself. The right woman saved my life, though I cannot fathom why. I must try again. There's an eclipse coming in September 2025. If I live to see it, I'll be better prepared." "We missed it," Sebastian said, despair creeping into his voice. "The eclipse my grandfather mentioned, it's gone." "Not necessarily," Eleanor replied. "Augustus misunderstood something fundamental about the ritual. It's not about celestial timing. It's about the sacrifice itself, blood freely given by the last of the bloodline, with full understanding and acceptance of the consequences, which are the end of the Blackwood line, one way or another, either through the complete surrender of the fortune or through your death." The library fell silent, save for the drumming of rain. Sebastian felt the weight of generations pressing down upon him, the accumulated sins of ancestors he'd never met, the blood price paid by innocence. "Then we find a way to surrender the fortune completely," he decided. Eleanor studied him carefully. "The entity won't release its claim easily, and you must be prepared for the consequences. Not just poverty, but possibly worse. Worse than being party to generations of murder. The curse has sustained you in ways you don't yet understand," she warned. "Your health, your very life force, is entwined with the gold." Sebastian thought of his father, who had walked away only to be drawn back and destroyed. "Then so be it. I'd rather die free than live as a prisoner to this curse." For the first time, Eleanor smiled genuinely. "Then we have work to do. And not much time." The day before the full moon dawned clear and cold. Sebastian stood at the window of his grandfather's study, watching the groundskeeper rake leaves. The normalcy of the scene struck him as absurd. A man performing mundane tasks while beneath the manor gold-wept blood. "The ritual requires 3 elements," Sebastian said, turning to Eleanor. "The original coin from the vault, a mixture of my blood and soil from the mine where Thaddeus made his bargain, and something called the heart of the first sacrifice." Eleanor looked up from her work. "The mine is simple enough. It's only 20 miles from here. The coin we can retrieve tonight, and the heart of the first sacrifice." Sebastian asked, dreading the answer. "That's where it gets complicated. In these rituals, heart rarely means the literal organ. It refers to something essential to the person, something they valued above all else. So we're looking for something that belonged to..." "Who?" "Thaddeus's youngest brother, William. He was the first full Blackwood sacrifice after the initial bargain." Eleanor retrieved a small wooden box. Inside lay a silver pocket watch, unlike the ostentatious gold timepieces throughout the manor. "William's watch," she explained. "A gift from his fiancée, Ruth. They were to be married the same month Thaddeus sacrificed him." Sebastian opened it to find an inscription. "To William, may our time together be eternal." "All my love, Ruth." "Did she ever know what happened to him?" "The official story was that he died in a mining accident," Eleanor replied. "But I think she suspected the truth. She never married, never left Silver Creek. She became the town's schoolteacher and lived into her 90s, still wearing William's ring on a chain around her neck. How do you know these details? Eleanor's gaze drifted to the horizon. I knew Ruth. I watched over her when I could, though I could never tell her the truth. So we have the watch, Sebastian said. We can get soil from the mine today and the coin tonight. What then? At midnight, when the full moon reaches its zenith, we perform the unbinding ritual. Eleanor hesitated. But Sebastian, you must understand. This isn't like exorcising a ghost. The entity is ancient, powerful. It won't release its claim easily. What will happen? It will offer alternatives, compromises. It will tempt you with solutions that seem to provide escape without sacrifice. Her eyes locked with his. It will lie, Sebastian, and it will know exactly which promises would tempt you most. Sebastian thought of the bleeding gold, of generations of Blackwoods who had presumably stood where he now stood, making similar plans only to falter. How can I resist what tempted every Blackwood before me? Eleanor's expression softened slightly. Because you're not just a Blackwood. You're also your mother's son. And Sarah McAllister had no price. No amount of money could sway her from what she believed was right. The mention of his mother brought a lump to Sebastian's throat. He had her eyes, everyone said so. We should go to the mine, he said, while there's still daylight. Eleanor nodded, returning the watch to its box. There's one more thing we need to discuss before we leave. She hesitated. The ritual requires blood freely given, but it also requires acceptance. You must not only be willing to surrender the fortune, but to accept whatever consequences follow. I understand that. Do you? The entity has sustained the Blackwood line for generations. Your health, your very existence is entangled with it. Breaking the connection could mean my death, Sebastian finished. I might not survive without the curse. Yes, a heavy silence fell between them. I've made my decision, Sebastian said finally. I won't continue this cycle. I won't sacrifice others to preserve myself. Eleanor studied him. Your father said the same thing once. My father walked away. I'm staying to finish this. As they prepared to leave, Sebastian paused in the foyer, looking up at Thaddeus Blackwood's portrait. For the first time, he noticed a young woman in the background, her face partially in shadow, but her eyes bright and direct. She wore a simple locket around her neck, identical to the one Eleanor touched throughout their conversations. He included you in his portrait, Sebastian remarked. Eleanor didn't look up. Thaddeus believed I would eventually forgive him. Her voice was flat. Even as I watched him sacrifice his own brother, he believed I would someday stand by his side, willingly. Did you ever? Never willingly. She finally raised her eyes to the portrait. But the curse bound me as surely as it bound the Blackwoods. In different ways, we've all been prisoners. Sebastian turned away from the smugly confident face of the man who had damned them all. Then it's time we all went free. The abandoned Silver Creek mine loomed before them, its weathered timbers forming a skeletal mouth in the hillside. Autumn leaves swirled around the entrance, occasionally expelled by some unfelt breath from within. This is where it all began, Sebastian said, where Thaddeus made his bargain. Eleanor nodded, her eyes fixed on the dark opening. The entity was already here, dormant in a small vein of gold too deep for the original miners to find. Your ancestor didn't summon it, he awakened it. As Sebastian shouldered his backpack, a faint vibration ran through the ground beneath his feet. Did you feel that? He asked. It knows we're here. It knows what we intend. You speak as if it's conscious. It is. Eleanor started toward the mine entrance. Not human consciousness, but something older, patient. It thinks in decades, centuries. If it's aware, why hasn't it stopped us already? The terms of the original bargain constrain it, just as they constrain your family, Eleanor explained. It must allow each Blackwood heir the opportunity to continue or break the covenant. Free will is essential to the transaction. You make it sound like it feeds on more than just blood. Blood is merely the medium. Eleanor confirmed. What it truly craves is the willing surrender of human potential, the knowledge that a soul has chosen gold over compassion, wealth over innocence. Switching on their flashlights, they ventured into the mine. The tunnel sloped downward, supported by timbers that looked rotted but were surprisingly solid beneath the weathered exterior. "Like so much of your family legacy," Eleanor remarked, appearing decayed on the surface while remaining stubbornly intact beneath. After what seemed like an hour, the tunnel opened into a larger chamber where several smaller passages branched off. Eleanor closed her eyes, her head tilted as if listening beyond human hearing. After a moment she pointed to the leftmost tunnel. "That one. It leads to the lowest level." The tunnel was narrower, requiring them to proceed in single file. The descent became steeper, the air noticeably colder. "Do you feel it?" Eleanor asked. Sebastian started to ask what she meant, but then noticed a faint vibration running through the rock around them, resonating somewhere behind his eyes, in the hollow of his chest. "What is that?" "The entity," Eleanor said simply. "We're approaching its domain." The vibration intensified as they continued, becoming an almost musical hum. The tunnel widened suddenly, opening onto a gallery whose ceiling was lost in darkness. In the center stood a rough stone altar, its surface stained dark with what Sebastian instinctively knew was blood. Behind it, the rock wall glittered with veins of gold that seemed to pulse within a light. "This is where Thaddeus made his offering," Eleanor said, "where William's blood was spilled to seal the bargain." Sebastian approached the altar slowly, his flashlight revealing intricate carvings around its base, symbols similar to those in his grandfather's arcane texts. The stone itself had an oily sheen that repelled light rather than reflecting it. "We need soil from the base of the altar," Eleanor instructed. "Be careful not to touch the altar itself. It remembers those who touch it." Sebastian knelt beside the ancient stone, scooping soil into a glass vial. The earth here was different, darker, almost black, with a consistency like fine ash. As he worked, the humming vibration grew more pronounced, the gold veins pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. His flashlight caught something half buried in the soil, a small, tarnished button. He carefully extracted it, brushing away the clinging earth. It was brass, engraved with an intricate bee. "From William's coat," Eleanor said. "Thaddeus kept the gold pocket watch as a memento, but William was wearing his best suit when they brought him here." Sebastian placed the button in a separate pocket. It wasn't part of their planned ritual components, but something told him it might prove useful. With the vial filled and sealed, they prepared to leave. As Sebastian stood, his foot slipped, his hand instinctively shooting out to steady himself against the altar. The moment his skin contacted the stone, energy surged through him. Images flooded his mind. A young man struggling against restraints, begging his brother for mercy. Blood spilling across stone, gold veins pulsing, growing, spreading through. Rock-like living roots. Generations of Blackwood standing where he now stood, some reluctant, some eager, all ultimately capitulating to the hunger of the gold. And beneath it all, a presence, ancient, patient, amused by human struggles and human choices. Sebastian felt it notice him, felt its attention shift like a massive predator catching the scent of prey. There was curiosity in that attention, surprise, that a Blackwood would return with defiance rather than supplication. Eleanor's hand on his arm broke the connection. He gasped, suddenly aware that he had stopped breathing during the contact. "What did you see?" she demanded. "Everything," Sebastian managed. "All of them, all the sacrifices." He looked at her, seeing beyond her youthful appearance to the century of suffering beneath. "You were here, every time." Eleanor nodded, grief momentarily overwhelming her composure. "The bargain requires a witness, someone to remember the price paid, to carry the knowledge forward." She gestured to the dark stains on the altar. "Not all of that blood belongs to Blackwoods." Sebastian felt sick. "We need to end this. Now." "We will," Eleanor promised. "But first, we need to get back to the manor. There's one more component to gather before midnight." As they emerged from the mine, Sebastian could still feel the entity's attention following them, not threatening yet but worthy of notice. For the first time, he understood why previous Blackwoods had faltered. The entity wasn't simply a curse. It was intelligent, patient. It had broken the will of generations of his family, turned good men into monsters for gold that dripped with blood. But as they returned to their vehicle, Sebastian felt his determination harden. The faces of the sacrifices he had glimpsed, William, distant relatives, his grandmother, perhaps even his father, strengthened his resolve. "It won't claim another Blackwood," he vowed. "One way or another, this ends tonight." Eleanor studied him in the golden light of the setting sun, her expression both proud and infinitely sad. "Yes," she agreed softly. "Tonight it ends." Neither mentioned the unspoken possibility that ending the curse might mean ending Sebastian's life as well. And that concludes our story for today. I want to thank you for staying with me until the very end. If you enjoyed this tale from the shadows, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to our channel for more stories that will keep you awake at night. Have you ever experienced something strange or unexplainable? Or perhaps you've heard a chilling story passed down through generations? Share it in the comments below. Your story might be featured in our next video. Until next time, remember, not all mysteries are meant to be solved.